a base salary is definitely for a software engineer is going to be over six figures, probably base 110, all the way up to 150. You're probably looking at average of 140 starting salary, which is great, right? Your stock is looking just at 100,000 for the most part. From here, I've heard things from 90 to 110, 120. And the signing bonus is looking anywhere between 15 to 30, 35,000. So
That's awesome.
total, you're looking at around roughly like 225, $250,000 signing package overall. And the lifestyle, if you're safe with your money, if you're spending correctly, I would just say I'm 24 years old right now, and I own two properties.
We're here back at the Custom Journeys live studio here at the Ion Center in Houston, Texas. And we're excited here to talk to Ernest Holmes. Ernest Holmes is a Google software engineer and also the co-founder and president of CodeHouse, a nonprofit organization. And we'll talk more about what they do in a moment. But if you are listening there, be sure to subscribe and watch, sub, and like our podcast on YouTube and the audio pod on Google Play and audio podcasts. And please follow us on Instagram. And here we're excited to have Ernest. Ernest, thank you for coming on the pod today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to share my story.
Cool. Oh, I forgot to mention, this is off the top of my head from memory. Ernest has a BS in computer science and mathematics, which is something I wanted to ask you for a while since we first met in our pre-interview. But yeah, we're really excited to hear your story and hear all the struggles and triumphs you've had in your career thus far.
For sure.
Yep. Thanks again, Eli, with the killer NPR voice. I always smile when I hear him getting his radio voice mode. So cool, man. Thanks for taking time out to chat with us. I think I found out about you from LinkedIn, and when I did, I was like, yo, I gotta have this guy on the podcast. You're doing some great things. So let's go ahead and start, man. You got a really highly desirable job. You're a software engineer at Google. Is that the correct title, right?
So I was, but as of recently, I just became a technical program manager. But I could go into that whole change up with y'all.
Boss moves. All right. Now we could talk about it.
Got a news bomb here.
Yeah. So let's
live on the show.
Let's stick with the software engineering thing first, right? So while you were a software engineer at Google, tell me about like a day in the life for you as a software engineer at Google. What did your day typically consist of?
Yeah. So specifically, became a software engineer right out of undergrad at Morehouse College. Moved out to the Bay Area, living in Oakland, working in the San Francisco office. And I was working on a team called Fuchsia, which is a new operating system that's going to be doing some really cool stuff. It's open source, so everyone check it out. It's on fuchsia.dev. And I was specifically working under the USB stack. So if you don't know, us simply just plugging in a USB into a computer, whatever the gadget is, whether it's a mouse, a keyboard, a webcam, a charger, there's a lot of software that goes back and forth between the system and whatever device that you're connecting. And I actually had to learn about that stack while on this team. A typical day, truly, I live in Oakland, so it was really easy for me to hop on the BART and head over to the San Francisco office. I would get there right in time to make sure I don't miss breakfast. That would end at like 11. If you don't know, like Google breakfast is all free, or all food at Google is free. Gourmet chef, so it's like really fire breakfast. My favorite is the apple with smoked bacon, of course. And I'll probably get there like I'm gonna make myself sound a little better, like 10 15. Maybe I'll be pushing it a little bit, like 10:50. I think breakfast ended at 11 at the time, so I was really trying to get there in time. Have my breakfast, maybe meet up with some friends for breakfast or whatever, and then I went to my office, to my desk. And that's where I would first catch up on email, see if anything that I had to pay attention to, check out what my schedule was for the day. And I would have a bunch of different projects that I'll be working on. So we're launching on a few different devices. So I had like the different things I was working on the back end to get to that launch. But the true nature of being a software engineer, especially with the different teams, my team specifically, it was really go at your own pace. You know, you would have like almost like a big project to work on that should take, on average, you work out with your manager like say 2 to 3 months, and you just hack away on it over time, giving updates to your team and your manager. And so I'll work on that for a few hours. I wind up having maybe a meeting or two throughout the day. My team was a very meeting heavy, so like I had a lot of free time. Uh, get that free lunch because I'm all about the free food. The Google 15 is super serious, and then by 4 or 5, I would probably be out the door to head back home, and that was like a typical day as a software engineer.
So you said you worked on the USB team. First of all, I didn't know that there was like a lot of software involved on the back end of that. What's
Yeah,
what's kind of like one of the coolest projects that you've worked on, or like most recognizable? Like somebody's like, oh, okay, I know that project.
yeah. I mean, I know this is a podcast, so about just for y'all out there. So like these devices are Google Home Hubs. So the Google Home Hubs that you might see at any like Best Buy, with the screen on them, I wrote some code that this actually wasn't USB related. This was backlight related. So like the drivers that make the device actually light up, and that code is actually on all the USB home hubs that are launching stores. So if you buy one of these, a little bit of my code is like written on that. So that's like my claim to fame now with
All right,
Google and as being a software engineer.
dope.
Awesome. Could you describe as much detail as you're at liberty to talk about the process of getting hired at a place like Google?
For sure, for sure. So I mentioned earlier, I'm wearing the shirt right now, but I decided to go to Morehouse College, which is an historically black college in Atlanta, Georgia. Um, when I was first introduced to Morehouse, they immediately knew that I was interested in doing computer science because I started coding in high school, and they quickly recognized that like wanted me to be aware that there are a lot of opportunities from Morehouse to get into the tech industry. Google, Microsoft, Twitter, Apple, all these major tech companies were constantly recruiting on their campus, and that really enticed me to solidify Morehouse as my school of choice. And it just so happened that Morehouse was one of, I think, 15 or about 12 schools at the time um, that participate in the Google in Residence program. So Google in Residence is where they actually have Google engineers come and teach at different HBCUs and HSIs, Hispanic serving institutions. So when I was a freshman in computer science, I quite literally had a Google engineer teaching me intro to computer science concepts. And it was really cool. And he really set the scene for us and made it almost like more tangential to get to a place like Google, right? Because at first it's like, oh, these big tech companies, maybe one day that's a dream, but having a Google in front of you and saying like, no, like if you keep building these skills up, so going on this path, I can help you get not only land an internship, but get full time to Google. And I worked my butt off my freshman year. I participated in the Google Hackathon my freshman year with my sister. She went to Spelman College, JC Holmes, currently a professor at Spelman College. And we actually won first place at the time. So that was back in like 2015 fall. And next thing I knew, I was interviewing for an internship at Google on that winter. I never forget the call. Like, I think I just finished my last final exam and I was tired, headache, computer science is no joke, as you may know. And I get a random phone call from a random number from California, and I was like, "Who's calling me right now?" I'm thinking it's spam. It's like your car's in warranty is calling me right now.
Exactly.
But it and no, it was my Google recruiter saying that I got the offer. So next thing I knew, I was being sent out to California. They pay for your flight, your stay, and I was interning at Google. That first summer, I was on a mobile ad development team, so it was like working on like the SDK that allows people to embed ads into their applications. Um, and wound up getting 2 more internships after that. So every single summer that I was at Morehouse, I was actually going to Google in California to intern. The last team that I worked on was Android things, and it was really cool because my team specifically was working on putting machine learning capabilities and APIs into the Android things development kit. So this is basically allowed people to integrate machine learning into any smart devices that they're creating with our developer kit. And my specific project was actually to work on this flower that you see right behind me. It's a robotic flower that has a camera in it, and it will take in video feed of what's in front of it. And if it detects a face, it will see it, and it will determine your emotion. And depending on your emotion, it will turn different colors. So if you're happy, it will turn yellow. If you're angry, it will turn red, and so on and so forth. And it was a cool project because my project was literally to work on that flower in open sources so that people can download it and recreate the flower at home. Um, yeah, and then next thing I knew, with all that experience, I definitely interviewed with some other companies as well. I wound up getting like 6 offers my senior year, but ultimately decided to come back to Google full time. I just knew it was the place that I needed to be.
Dope. Hey,
I suspect it was the included breakfast that might have been the
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 deciding
breakfast.
factor.
the deal maker
Well, listen,
per se.
I'm telling you, if you ever go to Google campus, like the food there just hits different. It really does.
Uh,
Maybe because it's free, but I don't know.
that's what it is. Free food and free T-shirts for college students, man. You're gonna win them every time. So uh,
Exactly,
I don't
exactly.
doubt
And
it.
that's the ticket. I
Yeah.
think so.
Hey, quick follow-up question. So we did a little bit of research and saw that typically during like the Google interview process, you might have like a coding review that you have to do. Was that part of the process that you had to do? And if so, what advice would you give for
Mm.
others who have to go through that whole coding interview process?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. The coding or the specifically interviewing for Google in technical roles is no joke. There's a lot of problems with this process. I'm just not even just for Google, just in the tech industry and in general. There's a lot of issues and different things that need to be solved, right? But right as it stands right now, it's no joke. It's really testing your knowledge on those core concepts of computer science and data structures and algorithms, right? And how you can apply them to real life situations. So with a standard interview for Google, if you're coming to be a software engineer, you will have a series of, pre-COVID in person, but now like via Google Docs, technical interviews where you're faced with a prompt like, hey, create a function that takes in a string and it's going to return the reverse of that string or something like that, right? And they're going to be testing you on your ability to create that function and walk through the process of actually making the code that will make be the most optimized for that function, right? Or for that prompt that's given. And the biggest issue right now is that a lot of people fight that like the interview process does not correlate well to whether someone will perform well at a company like Google. That's a whole nother conversation to be had. But
Hmm.
one thing that I always advise people who are interested in interviewing for Google is like you need to train yourself to perform well in the interview itself, not necessarily to be a great software engineer at Google, but like the interview process you need to train for specifically. There's a lot of books, a lot of websites. Mainly, I always call out HackerRank and LeetCode for engineers to get familiar with the interview process so you can actually do some mock interviews. Carrot is another great organization that provides mock interview training for people because it definitely takes a different set of skills to make sure that you're being successful in it. And at the end of the day, if you have the technical content and skills, that's great. But it's pairing that with the ability to communicate and specifically communicate your ideas and your thought process well to the interviewer so that they can see exactly how you're able to solve problems. That's the key. And if you're able to do that well, you'll land any fang job out there.
I'm curious though. You mentioned that your performance in that interview might not correlate necessarily to performing well as a software engineer, but what type of characteristics in that interview are the managers or committee members looking for in a good employee?
Yeah, so I
And
mean, they're looking for problem solvers, right? I think one thing is that also I think to summarize it, I always say confidence, but you can take that a bunch of
Mm.
different routes, right? But if you have confidence, like I've been faced with interviews myself that I was like, I have no idea how I'm gonna solve this, right? Would I ever portray that to the interviewer? Of course not, right? So even though I'm internally freaking out, I would still portray myself as like, okay, this is gonna be a challenging problem. How do I break it down so it becomes more feasible to me, right?
Hmm.
So being able to keep your cool, take things one step at a time, and show that you're confident, even if you don't have the answer right off rip, is really, really, really important when it comes into this, right? So they're going to be looking at confidence. They're going to look at your problem solving skills. They're going to be looking at your ability to communicate, like I mentioned earlier. Um, people like to think that interviews are just a monologue. So I'm just going to sit there and start writing code and just talk the entire time. You should make it a
Exactly.
dialogue. They're literally trying to see if you will make a good fit for their company, right? Like, could I imagine this person I'm interviewing on my team? Will I want to collaborate with them? Will I feel comfortable working with them in the workplace? If you're able to communicate, talk with the person through how you're solving this problem, like how you're writing your code, show that you have empathy, show that you actually care about them as a human being. I think some people lose that as well, right? I would make jokes in interviews, right? I'll try to keep them funny and engaging, I will ask them questions about how they feel about their industry experience and how they like their team, like where do they see themselves. And this is like my secret sauce I always say to people or students. My favorite question to ask an interviewer is like, how many years have you worked at this company? Say they say 3 years or 5 years. I would then take it back and be like, do you see yourself at this company for another 5 years, another 7 years, or whatever they say? And the amount of people I've caught off guard asking that question, it's like, dang, I haven't even thought about that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've seen some people have some crisis like in an interview because they like I'm touching like their soul with that question. So the more you can show that level of just being human, I think is also really important.
That's a great point. I've heard people say before, like employers hire who they like and who they want to work with. I mean, you're just echoing all of that. So
Exactly.
that makes a lot of sense what you're saying.
It's not about
And
writing out the best pseudocode. It's really about, are you a fit for the department or the company, right?
Culture.
Yeah, all the culture. That's right.
and I'll tell you, I had an interview with a company. I don't know if I can mention the name or not, but regardless, I
Hey
was
man,
in
you
the
can
middle
do
of their
whatever,
interview process.
man. You can
Well,
do
I get
whatever
it's
you
a
like.
good right. It was Salesforce, right, and it was for a web engineer position, and I think it was like 3 or 4 people, but they just appreciated my story and my background so much that we almost forgot to do the technical portion of the interview. And truly, when they gave it to me, they were like, like I told them straight up, I don't know HTML, I don't know CSS, I don't know anything about web design, but I'm willing to learn. And that rang more true with them than anything else. They're like, oh, you can pick up all these skills like on the job. And they still had me look at the code, and I like somehow guessed like the correct answer to like the error that was in their code. But they still gave me the offer because they just saw how dedicated I was to learning and how willing I was to adapt to like their team. So I don't know. Everyone has
Gotcha.
played to their own strengths, but that's what I did when I was interviewing.
Was that an entry level position you were just talking about at Salesforce?
Yeah. This was like back when I was in college interviewing for full time.
So you mentioned that you graduated from Morehouse. You're a Morehouse man. What was your HBCU college experience like, and would you recommend others to attend a HBCU?
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, if you asked junior year of high school me, that would be going to all male black institution in Atlanta, Georgia, I would have said hell no. Like capital HELL, right? Like that was the last thing on my list. I'm from a predominantly small white town in Jersey. I didn't even know what an HBCU was, let alone a Morehouse. Like what is a Morehouse? Like but truly the best decision I've ever made in my life. Hands down, best decision. Um, my sister, I mentioned earlier, JC Holmes, went to Spelman College. She's 2 years older than me, so like she was definitely a big influence on me to go to an HBCU. I just saw all the opportunities that she was getting. Like she literally met the Pope out in Italy, met Bernie Sanders when he was campaigning for president, like a bunch of crazy stuff. I can go on and on and on. And encouraged me to apply. I even went down to check it out. Honestly, I don't know if you've ever been to Morehouse campus. Like they literally filmed Hidden Figures there. Like, have you seen the bathroom scene? Like,
Yes.
Tragic
Oh,
Hanson running back and forth in the rain.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
Morehouse's campus. I was probably literally taking a
Really?
Calc. Yeah, I think I was like taking a Calc 2 or Calc 3 test at the time when she was filming it. But she was yelling so much that we just canceled the
Teacher,
test.
you running through the halls. That's dope, man.
Literally. And it's an old campus. This is what I'm getting at, right? So like when I got there, I checked it out. I was like, this is not impressing me. Like this is not like state of art buildings or anything like that, right? But when they talked about the brotherhood, when they talked about the opportunities, I was more encouraged to go. But even when I decided to go and was driving down to Atlanta with my parents and my sister, I was not excited. I was like, I'm not gonna make any friends. I'm not gonna like anybody. I'm gonna just go in and get out in 4 years, and that's going to be that, right? And quite literally the complete opposite experience. Some of my best friends to this very day, like my brothers for life, are like my best friends I met my freshman year. Um, a lot of people think like at HBCUs that since everyone is predominantly black, that there's like lack of diversity, but you start to meet people from like small way towns just like yourself, where you're that one black kid in honors and AP classes, and then you meet some people from like just around the Atlanta area, right? And it's just like you meet so many people with so many different schools of thoughts and so many backgrounds that's like you almost like forget that you're only surrounded by people that are predominantly black, right? And that goes to say even with your faculty and the staff at Morehouse, but all HBCUs, they truly care about your experience. I see a lot of them as like my aunts and uncles, you know, like they invest more in me just to make me the man I am today than I would ever have guessed going into Morehouse. And then let alone just like the actual experience of going to HBCU, which is a lot of fun as long as you're staying on top of your schoolwork and really thinking about your professional growth outside of the all the activities on campus. You know, I did everything from like all the events. I'm Greek. I'm a member of Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated. So like I had my fun at Morehouse as well, you know.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I think I didn't going to a HBCU didn't even cross my mind when I graduated, just because I heard like, oh, it's a party school. Prairie View is like the biggest one down
Hmm.
here in TSU, so it didn't really cross my mind. But when I hear about like all the stories and experiences that you and other HBCU grads had, I'm like, man, I kind of feel like I'm messed out. Like I ain't get a chance to get into the party, and not just a party from like a party standpoint, but just like you said, I've seen like so many opportunities, like Bernie Sanders, like you mentioned. I've seen like College Hill was just on TSU's campus down here in Houston recently. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. And then if I would have been lucky and fortunate enough to go to Morehouse at some point, I might have been able to have Robert Smith come on campus and wipe out my student loan debt. So
Yes, sir.
talk to me about that real quick. So were you in the commencement like during that whole process? How was that?
Yeah, that was my graduating class, man. So I was one of the 400 that got their debt paid off. Um, I will always say, and my parents always make me say it, they did pay for the majority of my schooling. We haven't just taken like a very, very small loan out of the last semester a few weeks before that happened. And that was wiped out as well, right? So I would say I think it's a bigger message there that a black man or the richest black man in America would be willing to invest in a community of black men like that, right? I had a lot of friends who quite literally couldn't go to grad school, even though that's what they desired to do, because they couldn't even think about why, like, or how they would manage putting more debt on their plate or their family's plate, right? I think one
Hmm.
thing that I talk about now with like even encouraging more students to get into the tech industry is like these six-figure salaries and jobs like have not only impact on that individual but their families as well, right? Like a lot of people in our communities are faced with like carrying debts and other struggles that their families carry as well. So like to for Robert Smith to do such a thing is like not only impacting of course the students but like their entire families. And I'll tell you like in the stands like people were crying, cheering, hugging, like it was like almost not true. I think a little history for y'all about Morehouse. We always cross on the Century campus outside. Morehouse is actually on the highest geographical spot in Atlanta. So not like,
Hmm.
yeah, there's skyscrapers in Atlanta too, right? But like if we
Yeah,
just
yeah.
took all the land, like Morehouse is on the top, the highest hill. And that's actually where the Battle of Atlanta was fought during the Civil War. And the narrative is you can't step on the grass because a lot of our ancestors died in those grounds. And you need to earn your right by getting a degree to step on your ancestors' backs. So we always cross, no matter if it's raining, if it's snowing, whatever the case is,
Yeah.
cross on Century campus. So the thing with that is that it's May and it's super hot in Atlanta, right? We're just talking about weather down in the south. So we actually had to get up and ready for commencement at around like 5:30. We had to be on campus super early because we're hoping to beat the sun. Of course, with commencement, there's a lot of people talking, a lot of preaching going on. So we're just out there in the heat, tired. Senior week. Of course, we were out all night too. So I think everyone was just like almost delirious at the point where like we're ready to cross the stage. So when it came for the commencement speech, we were all like, okay, this is great. We heard him speak recently as well in Morehouse. So we were like, okay. But like when he dropped the big announcement, we're all, I think, dazed and confused for a second here. Just like, what is going on right now? It was just such a surreal moment. And one last thing I'll add about Robert Smith is just a testament to his character. He actually has monthly calls with my class of 2019 to this day. So we actually hop on Zoom with them, and we actually still talk with them and chat with them, update about our lives. He even brings guest speakers on, like the founder of Shea Moisture was on the call the other day, and then Steve Harvey the day before. And we're talking about different ways that we can leverage our class and this community to get back in a bunch of different ways. So there's a lot of things that come with that as well.
Dope. Yeah, I heard that the guest speaker nugget on the Earn Your Leisure podcast where Steve Harvey said he came on recently. So that's
Oh,
dope
okay.
that you guys get that. So
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Well, what a send off to your academic career at that point, Ernest. Before we move on, though, I am very curious to know a little bit more about your double major, and
Yeah.
specifically because getting a STEM degree in of itself is a challenge. I think both Andrew and I can attest to that. But double majoring, that's an amazing achievement. And so, if you can speak to the journey or why you did that, and also what that helped you accomplish in your career.
I will let you know right now, the only reason I got a double major was a very selfish reason. So like I said, my sister went to Spelman. She is very, very smart.
competition.
She is very, very smart.
Okay.
She came to Spelman with, I think, like, she took like 12 or 13 like AP classes. So they basically, when she went to Spelman, they were like, hey, you could basically skip your freshman year. We'll like enroll you as a sophomore. So she finished Spelman with a mathematics degree in 3 years. And of course, she's gonna rub that in my face. And I said, you know what? I'm not gonna finish in 3 years just based on how credits work out. But let me see if I can show 2 degrees in 4 years. And I was lucky enough that two of my really close friends at the time were also double majoring in computer science and math. So we basically all made the decision together. So I had a community to support me, right? But I needed to get the 2 degrees because my sister got her 1 and 3. Um, and I'm proud of myself for that because it was not easy, right? I think that's another big crossroads is when you are in this field. It's very enticing, and obviously I took this route, but to go in the corporate industry and make all the money and 6 figures and all that. But at the time, I was very interested in pursuing and getting my PhD as well. So the added benefit of being competitive with my sister was also that it would better prepare me for a graduate level degree. And I mentioned earlier, or last time when we did the pre-talk, that I definitely am still interested in considering getting a PhD, but that was basically my justification for getting the second major. So I was computer science originally, and then I added on the math major.
I figured there was some family competition between you and your sister. So I'm not too surprised there. That's cool.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, I won't dig. So yeah, You know what I'm going to say about in regards to the PhD, but we'll say
Leave the man alone.
I'm sorry. I'm
I be trying to convince everybody to do a PhD, man.
No, it's been coming up in recent conversations for me, so I need the encouragement.
No, we'll save that for a follow-up episode interview talk.
Cool.
We'll reel you in. But no, moving forward now, I'd like to talk about CodeHouse. Now,
Yeah.
if you can give us what is the mission statement of CodeHouse?
Yeah, so CodeHouse is a 501c3 nonprofit focused on exposing students of color to the tech industry and pathways that lead there. So specifically looking at that gap between high school to college, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that transitional period. So I was a senior at Morehouse, so this is back in 2019, and a group of friends and I wanted to come together to make like a program to impact the Atlanta area, right? During my time in Morehouse, especially after my first internship, I was like consistently asked to talk to elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, community centers, et cetera, right, about being a black man in tech. And basically, we landed on this concept of Tech Exposure Day. We called it CodeHouse Tech Exposure Day. So one day event, think of it like a field trip where students were able to come to Morehouse, get exposed to HBCUs, but then also about the various opportunities in the tech industry, specifically and really relying on the fact that these students will get to see people that look like them in this field, right? So we wanted inviting 150 middle and high school students from Atlanta public schools to Morehouse. They got the HBCU experience, but then they got to meet representatives from Google and Microsoft and Dell and IBM. We had like 9 companies there that first year, and more specifically, Black and brown people that represents the students. And it, like, I don't think we realized the magic that was happening while in the moment, right? But you know, it was after the fact when like so many of the educators who came were thanking us for the event, and even faculty from Morehouse, Bowman, and Clark Atlanta were thanking us like this was a great event. That we're like, oh wow, we have something here. We see that this is a need in the community. Maybe we can keep running with this. And at the time, I was graduating college. I was moving out to Oakland. I was like, goodbye, Atlanta. I was already done. But I knew I wanted to continue doing the work. So basically, I had my legal advisor, unofficial, my father, who practiced law in New York City for many years, and then my financial advisor, my mother, who was actually did the taxes for the state of Texas for like the last 27 or 28 years, I think at this point. It was almost easy to have a community around me to make this into a 501c3. I shouldn't say easy because it took a lot of work, but I had the support system necessary to make it into a 501c3. And, next thing we knew, we had a second event a year later for 400 students, also in Atlanta. Then COVID happened, and we're like, what are we going to do? So we spun it to a virtual event, had over 2,000 students nationwide attend from like 26 plus different states, gave out like $30,000 worth of prizes, a $10,000 scholarship, and MacBooks and Xboxes and all that great stuff. And then to the point where I was like, this exposure work is great. Students are getting to know about these careers in tech. Hopefully they're getting inspired to go to HBCUs as well. But I wanted to do something more tangible. Like, it was like casting a wide net, but I wanted to, to keep with the same theme, like catch some of the big fish and really support them into the system, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that's the best way to create that narrative, but we had this concept basically around that transitional period into college where we knew that students will come into their freshman year, if they did major in computer science, that a lot of students struggled. And it was a lack of resources, what we boiled it down to. So lack of financial resources, students were dropping out because they couldn't afford college. Lack of technical and professional development support. So like they didn't have all the skill sets necessary and were exposed to those skill sets necessary to be successful in this field at an earlier age. And then like just a lack of community, right? They didn't have the right people guiding them and mentoring them to make sure that they felt supported to make it into this industry, right? And so we made this initiative called the CodeHouse Scholars Initiative, where it was a concept where graduating seniors at high school can apply as long as they're majoring in a tech-related field, going to one of our schools. They'll get $20,000 in scholarships. They'll get a 4-week summer academy before they even get to college to build up those technical and professional skills. And they'll get a mentorship program throughout their freshman year. So they'll get a collegiate mentor to guide them as a big brother, big sister through the academic studies, and then an industry mentor from some of our partnering companies from the tech industry. And of course, it's a cohort model, so then they'll have each other as well to lean on and making sure that they're building each other up into this process as well. Next thing we knew, we were in front of like 3 VPs at PayPal. Shout out Vonda Page, who like made that meeting happen, and Kim Jenkins. And we closed on a $1.5 million grant for CodeHouse to do this work. Followed up by actually one of my profiles who works at Microsoft, heard about our initiative and was like, get Microsoft to give you $100,000 as well. Fast forward to this year where, we had the CEO of YouTube come and speak to the students, and they surprised us with a $1 million grant as well,
Killing
So
it.
now at this point, I'm sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but so we're at like $3 million in funding for this initiative, and we're in the process with our first cohort scholars, 29. They're based in Atlanta, so Morehouse, Bellman, Clark, Atlanta, and they're killing it. Like already 19 out of the 29 have internships after their freshman year, their first semester freshman year at that, doing well in their studies and really setting the path for these next cohorts to come.
No, that's amazing. You just mentioned what our research department found out about CodeHouse, and that is the $1 million grant from Google. But from YouTube and from Microsoft. Those are amazing numbers.
Yeah. Congrats on that. So
For sure.
one
Thank
other
you.
thing we saw is that so you have the what is it, the Scholars Initiative coming up. You have the deadline coming up, right, for the next cohort, April 8th. Is that
April
correct?
8th is where the application closes. So we're currently accepting, going to be selecting around 45 scholars for this next cohort from Morehouse, Spelman, Clark Atlanta, North Carolina A&T, and Howard. So we're actually expanding outside of Atlanta this year, which is exciting.
Okay. Hey, so hook our listeners up real quick, man. So of course they got like the guidelines for the application, but what if anybody listens to this video, what specifically are you and the rest of the committee looking for from candidates who you're looking to accept? How can they improve their chances?
Yeah, I mean, and the committee, just to be clear, is like made up of some of our industry partner representatives and CodeHouse team. But we're looking for leaders. We're looking for truly cultivating the next leaders in tech that will be going to HBCU. So if you can show that you're a leader in your community, a leader at your school, whether that's holding president, vice president, like leadership positions in different clubs, just being part of different clubs, showing that you're actually passionate about furthering your education, right? We need some students that are willing to take opportunities and can recognize when opportunities are being presented in front of them, right? Because I could give you as many opportunities as possible, right? But if you're not being proactive and taking those opportunities, and they're literally just going to sit there worthless. So we need students that have those qualities and can prove that they have those qualities through the actions they've taken in high school and middle school and just in their life in general so far. Those are different things I personally look at when we're doing these applications.
Gotcha.
I got a quick follow-up for Ernest. Now, let's say that I'm a young high school student. I apply, I get in, woohoo, into the Morehouse program. Will this program help me to get ready for that intense interview with Google where I have to, on the fly, come up with pseudocode?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the intent is. We're more about career awareness than really, let's say, readiness, but we have a lot of programming, a lot of partners have programming that will definitely help students get there, right? I think one of the things I always tell high school students, like, if you don't remember anything from everything I'm saying about going to Morehouse or going to HBCU or just college in general, know that as a freshman, you should still be leaving your freshman year with that freshman year internship for that summer, whatever that following summer is. And most of these companies specifically have internships tailored towards freshmen. Google does, Microsoft does, Facebook does, Twitter does. But the thing is, a lot of freshmen don't realize, because going to college is a lot. I know, right? We've been through there. So you're getting used to college, taking new classes, maybe living on your alone for your first time. You're doing a lot. But right in that fall, that first semester, applications open for all these internships. So you need to be thinking about that in the back of your head as well. And that's one thing we do at CodeHouse. Like, these students get to know ASAP that these opportunities are there for them. So they start preparing ASAP, right? So it's a lot about that awareness piece that I think is really important, that they just need to know, like, this is an opportunity ready for them. And this is how we can go about tackling those opportunities for you.
Gotcha.
100%.
So look, next segment is going to be real rapid fire, factor cap. So essentially I'm going to ask you 5 questions, say factor cap, and then give me, if you want to give a brief explanation, you can. All right.
Okay.
Cool. So number 1, factor cap, you can get a tech job without coding experience. Now, let me rephrase that. Sorry.
Okay.
Factor cap, you can get a software engineering job without coding experience.
Without coding experience, I would say fact, because you need to have some kind of coding experience. Now, the switch up, and I'll be very honest with this answer, is can you get it without a college degree? Because technically, most of these companies said that you don't need a college degree it's not a qualification anymore. Personally, I always encourage people to go get a formalized education, right? And the fact of the matter, and this is coming from me being a black man, and this is my standpoint, when we look at Google receives about 2 million applications yearly, right? The odds that they're going to pick Google Home is going off, that they're going to pick
She knows you're talking about her.
Stop. Google, stop. This is going
Google
on.
knows.
The odds that they're going to pick a student from Washington High School in Zone 6 Atlanta, right in the West End, right, that has no formal education in computer science, meaning college education, the odds are just very, very, very slim. Can it happen?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. But the odds are just not in our favor. So especially when I'm talking to Black and Latinx students, I'm like, y'all, if you can, especially when it comes to financially, if you can, please go get a formalized education. Preference in HBCU, of course, but just get education more formally because that's how we stay in the game.
Gotcha. Next one, fact or cap. It's not what you know, it's who you know. So your network is
That
more important
matters.
than your skills.
Cool. Uh, fact. I will say fact
Okay.
at the end of the day.
All right,
Connections
cool.
matter.
Next one, LinkedIn is the best way to network with people. Fact or cap?
Uh, I say cap. I like an in-person relationship. My LinkedIn is blown
Okay.
up all the time.
Gotcha. Now I can go rock with that one. Fact or cap? College should be tuition free.
Fact, for short.
All
I think
right.
Robert Smith is a great example of that.
Exactly. Never know what kind of talent you can get
Mm-hmm.
by lowering barriers.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next one. Last one. Fact or cap? You need to be good at math or love math in order to get
Sure.
into software engineering.
Cap. I think you need to be good at problem solving, not math specifically.
Okay, gotcha. So we're gonna see how much we can get through. So imagine you got like a little cousin, a little brother, a little sister, hypothetically, that they want to work at Google. This is their dream job, right? What would you tell them to do in order to get a job at Google? Don't just say, "Hey, go apply online." I'm talking about like your homie come up to you and they're like, "Bro, hook me up at Google." What would you tell them? What advice?
If they're still in high school, middle school, they need to get into coding classes ASAP.
Okay,
ASAP. ASAP, no Rocky, right? At the end of the day, having computer science skills, even if you want to be a software engineer or not, is going to trump everything else because that is such a high commodity skill set to have, right? Especially for our people of color, right? So the sooner you can start developing those skills, the better, right? Sticking with that high school student, if they can go to an HBCU, that's even more bonus points in making sure that you get to Google, right? All these schools now have strong relationships, and they're specifically looking for Black talent when they go to HBCUs, right? So I'm like my narrative. I'm like high school me is who I'm talking to right now, right? Um, but at the end of the day, you need to start preparing for those technical interviews as well to making sure that you can put your best foot forward when interviewing for Google. So
what about like college graduate or like that? What would you? Is there like a better way to apply or something like that, or no?
I would say a better way to apply.
Or a
The
better way
fact
to
of the
improve
matter
your
is like
chances of getting in?
you like I said, like that was not a random number pulled out in the butt. Like Google gets so many applications, it's crazy. So if you can get in front and see if your school has a recruiter that has your school's jurisdiction, that's where I would. If you can't go to an event in person, try to use your LinkedIn skills to make sure that they get to know who you are, because the recruiters have a lot of pull to make sure that you at least get a foot in the door to get into the interview process. Once you're in the interview process, it is on you. It's your skills that either shine or don't shine to get the offer.
Gotcha. All right. So, quick question, two-part question. So, what is the entry level salary for a software engineer at Google? And what type of lifestyle could you live by becoming a tech professional? So, two in
That's
one.
what I was gonna ask him.
3-1. Okay, cool. So it's changed a little bit over the years for the better. Inflation is cool sometimes, I guess. But you look at a salary in three parts for any of these main companies. First is your base salary. A base salary is definitely for a software engineer is going to be over six figures, probably base 110, all the way up to 150 from what I'm hearing right now. So I mean that's a pretty wide gap, but it also depends where you live. Like out in California or New York, you're probably looking at average of 140 salary now, which is great, right? Your stock is looking just at 100,000 for the most part. From here, I've heard things from 90 to 110, 120, and then your signing bonus, and these are also like from what I hear on the streets, it's not a Google official by any means. I just need to put
Yeah.
that in there. But the signing bonus is looking anywhere between 15 to 35,000 now as well.
Gotcha.
So
That's awesome.
that, I mean, total, you're looking at around roughly like $250,000 signing package overall. And the lifestyle, if you're safe with your money, if you're spending correctly, I would just say I'm 24 years old right now, and I own 2 properties with my sister. Right, we bought a house near campus, near Morehouse in Spelman. She's a professor at Spelman, so it made sense for her. That is a 3-bed, 3-bath, and I live in a condo up in Buckhead, like the bougie part of Atlanta, whatever, right? So, but that, I'm 24, my sister's 26, and we're able to do this together at this age.
That's incredible. She's a professor at 26. That's great.
Yeah,
And do you work, quick question, do you work remotely?
I do now. We didn't really talk too much about it, but I'm technical program manager on partners and pathways. So this team specifically looks at bringing in marginalized groups to and better preparing their technical skills and helping them create new pathways into the tech industry and Google more specifically, right? So like we have an HBCU initiative, and we're an HSI, Hispanic Serving Institution initiative, and so on and so forth.
What HSIs have you been able to work with? Out of
Ooh, so I just
curiosity.
joined this team a few months ago, but as of today, I'm actually going to go visit FIU. We have a list of a ton of schools that we work with. I specifically been more focused on the HBCU side because that's
Right.
what I know better. But I'm looking forward to getting to know some of our more HSIs. There's a few down in Texas. I know New Mexico State has been to a few of our events, and a bunch out in California, like namely UC Fullerton. UTEP is also one of them down in Texas, I believe.
I can imagine. Yeah, you tell
Okay,
me. That
so
makes sense. All right.
yeah.
I'll have to get a research department on that one.
Get to San Antonio, man.
Yeah, they come to UTSA. Go
Okay.
Roadrunners.
That's where we
Cool.
went.
Yeah.
So it's just
Gotcha.
Now, before we close out, we like to give you one thought-provoking question to leave the episode with. And I think the one that we both, Andrew and I, thought would be most relevant for you is asking simply, is it worth it? Going through the struggle of getting a STEM degree, whether that's a 4-year college, whether that's a coding boot camp, either way, you have to put up money by taking out loans, taking a second job. Is it worth it? And give specifics to why is it worth it?
Yeah. I mean, short answer, yes, hands down, worth it. I think the tech industry is where to be right now, no matter what the specific field that you're in, whether it's sports, music, straight fan companies, what have social media, what have you. This is a spot that everyone needs to be somewhat adjacent to, right? With any career pathway, there's going to be trials and tribulations. There's definitely a lot in this space, whether it's affording college or learning the skill sets and really building up those skill sets so that you're going to be proficient in this industry. But I I have a different job now, but being a software engineer is one of the best jobs I've had, and especially as I had such a great manager and team supporting me in it as well. And talking about the impact, like you could literally, like the code I wrote for that device behind me that I mentioned earlier, isn't like on millions of devices now. So thinking about developing these skill sets and merging it with something that you're passionate about, like I just happen to be passionate about getting more people that look like me in this space, right? But other people, whether it's the medical field, thinking about the next billion user scenario, like all the people who don't have access to all these resources right now, and being a thought leader and how we can develop technology to help provide access and help make these people's lives better is going to be a lot of things that people are going to be focused on over the next few years. So it's definitely worth it. I I'm a big advocate for anyone to get into the tech industry for sure.
dope.
And breaking down barriers.
Yeah,
Really
definitely.
getting more of our
Barriers.
people in there.
Doing a hell of a job doing it.
Yes,
Hey,
yes.
I'm gonna try to sneak in one quick question for you. So you've
Yeah,
you've done some amazing things. 24-year-old technical project manager, CodeHouse, all this great stuff. If you had to name one thing, what would you do differently?
Truly, if my manager currently ever hears this, she wouldn't be mad, but I think I would have gone with grad school. Because now it's definitely a struggle. I feel like I'm in a position to help so many people in my roles. That's like, dang, like how am I going to handle trying to get a PhD right now? But that's been like a personal goal of mine, just like to get into two majors. So like I'm gonna be stubborn and get it one day. But I wish I had done that instead of going to the industry right away.
Gotcha. You making Eli
It's
happy.
not.
over
It's not.
here.
It's not. It's not too late, my friend. It's not too late. But we'll talk later about that.
Cool. Yeah, man. Now I just want to say I know we're trying to wrap up real quick. Thanks again for coming on, bro. We
For
had a
sure.
ton of fun. We definitely got to get you back on here. We got like a ton of questions to ask you.
Mhm.
But yeah, man, it's been a pleasure. So thanks again for taking time out to chat with us.
No, thanks for having me, y'all. Thanks for allowing me to share my story, and definitely reach out when y'all need something for sure.
Awesome. Before we close out, Ernest, is there anyone or anything do you want to shout out?
I gotta shout out my parents and my sister. They're my number one supporters, so I appreciate
Uh-huh.
them so much. They probably will listen to this at one point, so love you, mom and dad, and Jason.
Love that, man. I love that, man. I can tell you guys have a close bond. And I saw your board of directors and your board for your nonprofit is full with Holmeses. So
Homes everywhere, yeah.
yeah, homes everywhere. So I love that family project. Everybody's in
Yes,
on the
sir.
mission.
Yes, sir.
Cool. Well, thank you, Ernest. And for Custom Journeys, I'm Elisa Iglesias. This is my co-host.
Andrew Baines.
We're out of here.
Peace.